Hey everybody, Robert Dunt, arttop10.com, and today we are here at Lee Miller press preview in Tate Britain. Lee Miller essentially started out as a model, became a photographer, sort of new surrealists, did sort of arty photos, but then also went on to become more like a sort of war correspondent. So it's actually quite a fascinating journey, this exhibition, because it's all basically photos. Basically cannot go into close up on anything apart from 10 specific pictures, so you'll just have to get a gist of the room. So as I go around, this one is before the camera, first room. It's quite interesting, really. It says like a lot of these people here, her first exposure to photography was as a model, as I said already. But her father was a keen amateur photographer, and she posed frequently for him from early childhood. What I find quite interesting is loads of these people you find. I was watching a weird Charlie Sheen documentary recently, and he spent ages making films of himself. So a lot of these people are just always involved in these kind of the things they end up doing even before there's any fame or glamour from it. So she began modeling professionally in New York City in 1926, but then eventually went on to say, look at this quote that was good. She was inspired to become a photographer herself, declaring she would rather take a picture than be one. Pretty cool. But even then, professional photographic modelling was in its infancy when she was doing it. Anyway, so she was tall and slender with cropped hair. She embodied the androgynous beauty ideals of the 1920s. Right, let's have a little look at her, because there is one. This is the one bit in this room that we can actually film. So this is the one bit in this room we can film up close, which is her. So this is actually called Photoman Self-Portrait in New York City. First automated photo booths. So she was always excited by new technologies, took a turn, experimented with the best angles. Pretty cool, actually. She poses in the same sleek cloche hat she's wearing on the March 1927 cover of Vogue. Did a lot of work for Vogue later on. Anyway, pretty cool pictures. Let's move on, see what happens. Next thing, the exhibition you actually come to is a generally bizarre but fascinating film called The Blood of a Poet. It's Jean Cocteau's surrealist film, Le Sang d'un Poète, obviously The Blood of a Poet, where she plays a classical statue that comes to life, driving a poet to madness. Really weird, actually. It's like the poet standing in like a sort of Tai Chi pose at the start, and she is this statue, like a classical statue with no arms. It's quite a short film, but it's absolutely gripping. Kind of lost touch with all these kind of surrealist films these days. I think everything's so quick gratification, you miss things that take a little bit longer. But the film is physically demanding. Her marble-like palette was achieved with a mixture of butter, flour, and pomade. She performed with her painted eyelids shut and her arms strapped down under plaster stumps. Absolutely bizarre. Anyway, it's worth coming here to watch that on its own. Right, next room. Next room is called Dreaming of Eros. Cracking story about this room. When she moved to Paris in the summer of 1929, she was determined to be an artist. Man Ray was at the heart of the city's avant-garde circles, painter and photographer. She presented herself to him unannounced. I told him boldly I was going to be his new student. He said he didn't take students, and then he was leaving Paris for his holiday. I said, I know, I'm going with you, and I'm dead. Classic. Anyway, this led to a sort of romance and all these different photos, primarily of her, I guess, which is erotic, or anyway, what does it say on this thing here? They say, fascinated by the erotics of the body, they push the frontiers of photography to explore love, power, and desire. It talks about how it was difficult to say the authorship of these things, as they were kind of so closely entwined in what they were doing. It's intriguing. A bit like Picasso and Braque, they were doing Cubism. Anyway, loads of fascinating pictures in these rooms. You might well have seen some of these before. I'd seen some of these somewhere, probably in a Man Ray exhibition, I think. But these are cracking pictures. Can't show you any of these because none of them are on the list of the 10 things you can take a photo of. So you just got to get a little vibe of what's going on around me. Plus, I think a film that nobody had ever seen before, where the two of them swap the camera from one to another. Anyway, it's a good and interesting room. Worth coming to have a look at it. Actually, one of the most interesting things in this room, the Dreaming of Eros room, is how Miller, I think, was, as well as working with Man Ray, she was actually producing the images. A lot of the time she's cropped the images, produced different pieces of work, which is quite intriguing. So literally there's a crop of her torso, a crop of her head, or a crop of her with her neck. And she's making the images like that. It's actually quite interesting. And also the solarization technique, I don't know if you heard of that, but it's like, I think where the image is really exposed halfway through, exposure to the light, gives it a sort of burnt out, like the light's overexposed itself. She seemed to do that by accident as well. She seemed to have discovered that by accident. So she has quite a heavy role in what's going on here. And after she'd cropped the images and said they were her own when she cropped them, they had a big argument about whose the image actually belonged to. Interesting. Right. And room 3 is surreal gaze. So in this surreal gaze bit, she had a studio in Montparnasse in Paris. Lived and worked at the centre of the Parisian avant-garde. Met befriended artists associated with surrealism. These pictures are pretty cool, actually. I like the quote here. Some of the pictures I saw in my imagination, just as I would a painting, and I assembled the material for them. Right, there's 2 pics in here we can actually look at, so let's go and have a look at them. This is one of the pics we can actually look at. So, wound with hand on head, also known as coiffure, Paris 1931. It's a good image, isn't it? As it says, back of a woman's head, gripped by a tight collar, tight curls, and pointy nailed hand. Widely exhibited in the United States in 1932, including in a major survey of international photography. Interesting. Trying to demonstrate how photography could be an art form in its own right. Either way, it's a good image. A lot of these surreal images seem to have hands in them. But I guess you've also got quite a contrast between the lines left and right of the tight neck clothing, the curls of the hair, and the sort of spiky fingers. You've got a classic contrast between all those. Also has a weird sort of vibe of more like old style classical sculpture, I'd say. This is the other picture we can look at in here. Untitled Man. Untitled Man and Tar. So you got, that's weird, that tar on the right hand side, isn't it? Really weird. It looks quite glossy and glassy down there in that bit. And yet on the other bits it's more kind of dry. There's another picture on the left of this one, just untitled Tar, which says a pool of tar is across a pavement, sticky and glistening. Its curious texture and form can be mistaken for receding water. I think in this one it actually looks like it could be dropping away from you, like a crack in the pavement you could fall into. And then you've got those black shoes and trousers which look darker than the tar itself. On the other tar one it says Miller believed that photography there are at least 1 million variations between black and white. I know, pretty cool picture. Quite striking. The other ones in this room are actually also really interesting. Surreal ones, quite a lot of sort of sculpture that's almost brought to life. Anyway, let's keep on strolling. Right, so after Paris, she actually moved to Cairo in September 1934, having got married to an Egyptian businessman. Seemed to pretty much think about sort of giving up photography to start with, but then got drawn back into it and back into the avant-garde in Egypt or Cairo, essentially. She also went on regular expeditions across remote Egyptian deserts, as well as through Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Cyprus, Romania, and Greece. Photos here are actually quite fascinating because, you'd expect it just to be pictures of the pyramids and stuff, but interestingly enough, they're pictures of all sorts of weird things like car tyres or cement factories. The one you have got of the Great Pyramid of Giza is actually a shadow of it. Lurking across the rest of the ground. All the pictures here are quite weird, but they do sort of show you a different side to all those things. There's a picture over here of dancing bears with Roma trainers in Romania. all sorts of things. Now, there is one pic in here I can show you, which I'm going to head over to now. Right, so this is the pic I can show you in here, which is pretty cool. So I'd say it's slightly more surreal than most of the other ones in here, actually. But it's kind of a classic portrait of space al-Bulwayeb near Siwa 37. She says she took this photograph from inside a remote traveller's rest stop on the way to Siwa in Egypt's western desert. Through the veil of a ripped fly screen stretched across the window frame, she captured the sprawling empty landscape. It's quite hard to see. I keep thinking that's a sea, but it's not. It is actually, as far as I can see, like a desert out there. It's not actually a sea. It's weird, isn't it? It's a bit like a veil, and that square is weird. Framed by the rest of the square with it. Interesting. She seems to do different variants. So like it says in this one, they kept the edge of the negative, which adds, like you can see the sides and a little bit at the top, but that adds to the frame that's in that frame. It's a bit like an eye, isn't it? Or tear, anyway, whatever it is, pretty cool. Let's move on. This next room is Artists and Friends. Talks about how Lee Miller was famously charismatic and sharply intelligent, and she made many friends of leading artists and intellectuals of the day. So, when she took portraits of them. Actually, the interesting thing, she talks about the portraits. She says it takes time to do a good portrait and find out what idea of himself or herself he has in mind. And they're saying they were carefully staged and composed, because sometimes they look quite light and loosely made, but I guess that belies the fact they were actually quite carefully produced. Now there's also a fascinating little collage here in this room, which I think is absolutely quite fascinating. And you've got like pictures of Picasso holding like sun visors in front of his head, all these other people like Eluard, Max Ernst, Lenora Carrington, Paul Eluard, all these sort of people that are, really well known. Now, let me go and find the picture. Here we go, it's a picture, bizarre enough, picture of Charlie Chaplin we can look at here. Right, so this is the picture we can take a film of in this room. Weirdly enough, it's Charlie Chaplin with Chandelier Saint Maurice in 1932. One of several playful portraits Miller made of Charlie Chaplin while on holiday in a fashionable Swiss ski resort. She met him in New York in 1927. She makes the chandelier sprout from Chaplin's head. Apparently says here, tongue-in-cheek expression of his creative spark. It might have just been because they thought it was quite funny. Anyway, it's an interesting, weird thing is what Charlie Chaplin looks like. Never really got an idea of what he actually looks like as a human. And that chandelier is weird because it looks like it's made of rope. And it's got a weird picture. He looks quite sort of innocent and strange in that, which is fun. An interview later that year, she recalled the shoot fondly. Charlie said he had never had such good a time in his life as he had with what he called my surrealist photography. Anyway, there you go. That's a little bit of a vibe of this room. Right, this room is R6. Here is Vogue in spite of it all. She left Egypt, joined surrealist artist Roland Penrose, who I think she married, Joe joined him in London in September 1939, just before the outbreak of war. As a US citizen, she was ineligible for war work and offered her services to British Vogue, where she became the leading photographer. She had to work with restricted resources and clothes under rationing. That let her imagination kick in. What is more bizarre is the British government viewed women's magazines as crucial to morale and as a potent tool of state persuasion. Vogue encouraged women to enter the workforce and embrace clothing restrictions. Her work even helped popularise short haircuts, as the Minister of Labour appealed for help with head lice. Absolutely bizarre. Anyway, it's very weird, but she seemed to want to be more closer to the actual war from what I can see. In private, she was frustrated not to be closer to the front lines. It seems pretty silly to go on working on a frivolous paper like Vogue, she wrote to her parents. That may be good for the country's morale. It's hell on mine. Intriguing. Anyway, you get a little distant view of this room. Quite intriguing. There's actually other stuff interesting here on the wall. It says how hard it was actually. 3 months of solid hell at night and harrowing by day to get to work by some crazy route. count noses, see if everyone had really lived through it. A matter of pride that work went on. The studio never missed a day, bombed once and fired twice. Quite interesting. So, she worked really hard to keep it all going. Quite intriguing. Right, there's actually quite a few pictures we can look in this room. So let's go and have a look at them. Okay, so this is the sort of image that's popularised on the front of the exhibition, actually. It's the one they show everywhere. I don't think that's her, it just says model. But it's a pretty cool picture, isn't it? I don't know if she's meant to be using sort of reduced war clothing or any of these things, but it is a really good image, isn't it? Because it does look like she's an astronaut inside that thing. Very cool. And this is another one we can use. This is a corsetry with solarized image, so this is where it was sort of re-exposed to the light again. Gives you an amazing black line around the image, doesn't it? Which is very cool. Quite extraordinary, but that's a very cool pic, isn't it? Really bizarre. I guess trying to show off the corsetry, but that's a stunner of a pic, isn't it? It's just so weird. And that black bit on the right hand side adds to it, and the pillar behind the model is really bizarre. Really weird, those vivid black lines around it. Right, this is another one we can do in this room. That's quite an interesting picture, isn't it? That's the model Elizabeth Cowell wearing a Digby Morton suit. Maybe she's wearing one of these sort of kind of reduced clothing suits. Gosh, look at all that smashed up buildings in the background, man. Extraordinary. Oh, she was a BBC broadcaster. She stands sleek and stands stylish and undaunted amid the wreckage of the Blitz. Miller's editor, Audrey Withers, wanted this image to show so dramatically how it's possible for Vogue's entire world to carry on amid such wreckage. Skirt is straight and narrow as we feel all skirts will be in future, owing to the rationing of materials. Okay. So it's not big and flying because it's the lack of material. Extraordinary. Anyway, interesting. There's one more pic in this room we can look at. This is the last one we could look at in this room. Which is a pretty freaky pic, isn't it, man? Fire masks, Downshire Hill, London. Wearing plain wartime fashions, two models perch on newspapers. I see, you can see the newspapers on them. Outside the bomb shelter in Miller's Hampstead Garden. All right, Miller and a partner, Roland Penrose, painted the shelter, formerly a coal vault, in pastel pink. The models wear masks made of rubber and tin used by air raid wardens as protection against firebombs. With their eyes concealed, their stares have an unsettling quality. I mean, it's kind of almost like, to tell you the truth, I actually thought this was manufactured like surrealist photography. I had no idea that was actually genuine fire masks. Absolutely bizarre. A variant of this photograph is published in an American Vogue story. Argue that fires no more ruthless adversaries than the women of Britain. It's weird, I generally thought that was a sort of staged surrealist photo. What's she holding? Holding like a whistle, I guess. Really genuine. It's a weird picture in so many ways. So whatever is behind her, that wooden bombshell, looks like it's got fur on it. I'm sure fur was a weird sort of surrealist thing. As well as that grass adds a weird sense of texture to it all. Anyway, extraordinary photo. This next room, so grim glory Britain at war. Really, I think it's essentially about how I didn't realise German bombs fell heavily on London between September 40 and 41, killing almost 30,000 people, leaving 1 in 6 homeless. Interesting. Anyway, she documented, I think, essentially what happened. A Blitz, many of Miller's Blitz photographs are published as a book, Grim Glory. That's a good quote she's got here. Years ago, I fought and struggled to live in Europe, but chose my friends in these countries and their way of living, so I can't leave now, just because there isn't enough butter to go around. Anyway. It says British censors discouraged graphic images of violence, so she created poetic images that explored the absurdity and congruity of the bomb sites. Anyway, interesting room. Also, I think it goes on to document British women conscripted for the first time, poured into the workplace, which is interesting as well, isn't it? How these things change everything. Right, there are 3 pictures in here we can have a look at, so let's have a quick look at them. Right, this is one of them. Another Another bizarrely surreal photograph there. Got a weird contrast or similarity between the camera and the gas mask. Sort of weird technological complexity of both of them. Why is the umbrella in the background? Really weird picture. David E. Sherman dressed for war, it says. She met American Life magazine photojournalist Sherman in 41 in London. Became so close he moved into the home Miller shared with her partner Roland Penrose. Maybe she didn't get married to him. I'm not sure. Roland Penrose says. But obviously she was, I don't know, interesting. Who knows why he moved into the house. Anyway, Sherman faces us but is unrecognisable behind gas mask and helmet. The eye covering exec had the camera lens suggesting a wartime merging of man and machine. With a surrealist feel bizarre, the image evokes Sherman's sense of humour. At the same time, it presents the camera as a weapon of war. Maybe it does. Alright, it's a good pick. There's another one of the pictures. It's weird, isn't it? She always keeps that, whatever she's photoing, maybe not so much with the war stuff later. Perhaps it does. Well, there's a surrealist quality to it, isn't it? Remington silent. Remington produced a noiseless typewriter model marketed for its quiet keystrokes. Miller, delighted in wordplay, turns his shattered typewriter into a pun on the brand name. The image draws attention to the sculptural qualities of the broken machine. Abstract representation of the war's destructive energy. It's a cool pic though, isn't it? Love all those little typewriter keys all bunched around. It looks like there's a sort of microphone in there. And the wire of the thing and the sculptural thing it's on. Pretty cool. There's some actually other really cool pictures in this room that I cannot show you, unfortunately. There's actually some other really cool pictures I cannot show you in this room, like these two behind me. It's a really brilliant one of Burlington Arcade, just near the Royal Academy, blown to pieces, and a really bizarre sculpture smashed from... It must have been blown up in a bomb damage, but it's weird. It's like a sort of nude woman sculpture. It looks like again, like a surrealist picture. Literally. And you've got all sorts of other pictures in here that I haven't properly looked at, actually, of parachute packer, of like women going to work. Polish pilot seems to be a woman pilot. Interesting. Quite intriguing. There's one more pic I'm trying to get towards. Oh, sorry, that's my hand. One more pic I'm trying to get towards to show you. Okay, this one is your lunch in Charlotte Street today. Police danger. Look at that. That looks pretty cool on the iPhone, in fact. It's quite a dark print. Looks slightly better on the phone than it does here. I see. Actually, on the phone, you can actually see that there's a line tied across that police danger thing. And like, you've still got that surrealist thing that's like a little human head with an eye down there. But yeah, I guess that again shows you what's happening in the war. Intriguing photo. Right. There's lots of other good stuff in this room. Now that is actually the last picture in the whole exhibition I can show you. You've got about 3 or 4 more rooms of the war photography, so I'll just give you a brief explanation of what goes on in them, but we can't show you any of the pics, I'm afraid. Okay, so I'm afraid it's just pictures of me from here on in. So this is like room 8 in the field. She became an accredited war correspondent with the US Army, which is quite interesting. But found it really hard to actually get to the war zone, which she did in the summer 1944 after D-Day. She was finally allowed close to battle. It's quite interesting. It seemed to say that British women weren't allowed to be, what would you call them? Weren't allowed to be war correspondents. But as an American, she could. And you can see like a sort of US war correspondent outfit behind you there. You still got, once again, she sort of generally avoided graphic images, but you've got like weird images, like saying how she saw a severed hand somewhere, but the photograph is of a boot with like a machine gun bullet spilling out it, like entrails out of a boot. There's also there's a weird photo here of the body of a prominent Nazi politician, which is quite disturbing because he's dead, obviously. But she's taking the photo so that you can also see a glimpse of the Statue of Justice outside the window. She's got a sort of, I don't know, surreal, story kind of, not sure story is the right vibe, but certainly surreal. A strange way of putting things together the whole time. Anyway, these pictures are interesting. I'll just stay in this bit because there's another room which I can't film at all, which is pictures from concentration camps. Well, I think it's just one. Let me go and check what the name is. Yeah, so it's Birchenwald concentration camp. But the pictures in there are, well, there's like piles of bodies, which is profoundly disturbing. But also around this time, she was writing a lot about what she saw in the war, which is quite interesting. But yeah, the concentration camp pictures are quite are disturbing and also quite bizarre. She's also got pictures of like the guards of the camp who'd put on civilian uniforms trying to escape, or the guards had been beaten up by the people in there as they got out. It's a weird, disturbing, extraordinary set of pictures. The room after this is Aftermath, which is weirdly enough the aftermath of the war. So I think she said, like, they're raw. The war left unthinkable devastation. She recorded the euphoria of liberation giving way to disillusionment, which is quite intriguing. So a lot of these pictures here is like, I think Vogue wanted her to take a picture of people, looking chic in Paris. Now everything was over. But she's taken a picture of a chic-looking woman. But beside her is a window with bullet holes in it. It's got a weird thing. Like, there's a quote here. When Europe was yet to be liberated, when I thought and burned with ideas for years and suddenly found a peg on which to hand them, I found words and transport and transmission and courage. This is a new and disillusioning world. Peace with a world of crooks who have no honour, no integrity and no shame is not what anyone fought for. That's a pretty brutal comment, frankly, isn't it? She did seem to suffer very badly, ever onwards, from the war photography, basically. Like, I guess post-traumatic stress, probably not called that then, but I pretty much never even seemed to be able to take photos properly again. Became a gourmet cook, or started to make gourmet meals. It's quite bizarre. Although the last room we'll see in a minute is more like pictures of Picasso and stuff, which seem to be the best of her photos after the war. So I think she shared her struggles about this sort of war trauma with an editor, I guess, at Vogue. If I could find faith in the performance of liberation, I might be able to whip something into a shape which would curl a streamer and wave a flag. I myself preferred describing the physical damage of destroyed towns and injured people to facing the shattered morale and blasted faith of those who thought things are going to be like they were. Bit weird, a bit like COVID, isn't it? Why? There's so many things that have not changed back since COVID. Bizarre, isn't it? A new normality. Why is there a new normality? Anyway, and this is a really weird comment. She says, aware that desperate hardship could sow the seeds of a future war, she wrote, I'm taking a lot of kid pictures because they are the only ones for whom there is any hope. And also we might as well have a look at who we're going to fight 20 years from now. That's quite a disturbing comment, I think. Right, head into the last room. So this is the last room, Artists and Friends 2, when it's back to her taking photos of people like Dorothea Tanning, who's married to Max Ernst, loads of Picassos, Henry Moore, bizarrely enough, Dylan Thomas. Quite intriguing. But yeah, so she's got loads of photos of famous people again. I guess some of these Picasso photos look like sort of massively iconic ones you've always seen with him in his striped t-shirt. So yeah, obviously these portraits they're stunners, basically. They're really good. Right, and so that's where we got back to. So let's do a roundup. Overall, I think this exhibition is absolutely stunning. Really, really interesting. I knew about Lily Miller. I mean, I'd heard of her. I knew she was a photographer. I didn't really know anything actually about the war photography. Although I think supposedly she was in Kate Winslet did a film about her recently, and I did not know this was about her. I might even try and find that film now. I find it absolutely fascinating. I mean, she starts off as a sort of, uber brave. I think there's a quote at the front somewhere I might try and find about her being uber and brave, but she's going to take any risk. She'll do whatever she can, and obviously she starts out like that, sort of almost aggressively tracking down people like Man Ray. So I mean, she's really going for it, and then weirdly enough, that desperation to be at the centre of things, to then be in the centre of the war, sort of breaks her. It's quite strange, isn't it? That she dreamed of being able to take photos of those things, and then it kind of destroyed her in the process. Anyway, so it's quite a fascinating sort of journey from sort of fancy erotic, surreal stuff, Vogue pictures, through to these war pictures, through to this sort of shock to stab people. Especially even that room where you've got all the sort of the disillusionment after the war is quite intriguing. Anyway, very, very interesting exhibition. So please like and subscribe as I can go to more exhibitions and tell you about them. Please like and subscribe to my other channel, Travel Dog, so you can find out more exciting stuff about food and travel. And as ever, auf Wiedersehen, bye-bye. Is the quote I was looking for just now. In 1969, the photographer Lee Miller described the attitude that had underpinned her career. It was a matter of getting out on a damn limb and sawing it off behind you.